My stepdaughter publicly humiliated me, declaring I was not her dad while living off my home and money. I let her push me to my lowest point, never realizing that was the exact moment all she took for granted began to collapse. I'm 43, male, Dean. I drive an 18-wheeler for a living, and life dealt me a rough hand early on. First marriage, total disaster. Found out I'm shooting blanks. Infertile as a doornail, which apparently gave my ex-wife permission to test drive half the neighborhood. Came home early from a 2-week haul to find her getting busy with my best friend in our bed. Classy, right? Divorce took everything I had except my truck and my dignity. Spent 3 years living like a monk, hauling freight, and rebuilding my life 1 mile at a time. And let me tell you, those were some dark years. Living in truck stops, showering in gas station bathrooms, eating nothing but gas station hot dogs and energy drinks because every penny went to paying off lawyers and debt. The road becomes your therapist when you've got nowhere else to go. You know, I'd drive through Nebraska at 2 a.m., listening to talk radio, thinking about how I'd trusted 2 people completely, and they'd both screwed me over. Had this one run from Phoenix to Detroit that became my regular route. 26 hours of driving through absolute nothing. Desert, farmland, more farmland, then Rust Belt cities that looked like they'd given up on life. It was depressing as hell, but it was honest work. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was dealing with dispatchers who couldn't organize a 1-car parade and customers who acted like you were some kind of servant because you delivered their freight. I remember this one asshole at a warehouse in Ohio who made me wait 4 hours to unload, then had the balls to complain that I was behind schedule. But it saved me. Every mile was money in the bank. Every delivery was proof I could still function as a human being. By the end of year 2, I'd paid off the divorce debt and started saving real money. By year 3, I had enough for a down payment on a house, something that was actually mine that nobody could take away. That's when I met Marlene at a truck stop diner in Kansas. She was working the night shift, raising her 15-year-old daughter Haley alone after her husband died in a construction accident. Middle of nowhere, 3 a.m., and she was still cheerful to every trucker who came through. Marlene was different. Respectful, hard-working, didn't treat me like a walking wallet or expect me to fix every problem in her life. When I told her about being infertile, she didn't flinch. Kids aren't everything, she said. Good men are rare. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Moved them into my house, a nice 4-bedroom place I'd bought cash after the divorce settlement. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a real family. Marlene appreciated everything I did, never took my hard work for granted, and actually seemed to love me for who I was instead of what I could provide. Haley was 17 when we got married. Seemed like a decent kid. Quiet, polite enough, decent grades. I wasn't trying to replace her dad. I got that. Just wanted to be a positive male influence and help support her future. Set up a college fund. Made sure she had everything she needed. Standard stepdad stuff. There were these things that didn't add up. Like how she'd be super sweet when her mom was around, but give me these calculating looks when we were alone, or how she'd forget to do basic chores, but somehow always remembered when she needed money for something. It started subtle. She'd wait until Marlene was at work, then hit me with sob stories about school emergencies. Always reasonable amounts, always urgent, always with this helpless act that made me feel like an asshole for questioning anything. Dean, I'm so embarrassed to ask, but I forgot about this science project and I need materials tonight or I'll fail the class. Could you spot me $40? I'll pay you back from my birthday money, I promise. And like a sucker, I'd hand over the cash. Because that's what you do for family, right? You help out when someone's in a bind, except these emergencies started happening twice a week. She was smart about it, though. Never asked for crazy amounts. Never pushed when I occasionally said no. Always had believable explanations. The real red flag was her friends, Zoe and Shane, 2 of the most worthless human beings I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. Zoe was this pink-haired disaster who talked like everything was a personal attack on her existence. Shane was a 19-year-old musician who'd never held a job. These parasites started showing up at our house more and more, eating our food, using our Wi-Fi, treating the place like their personal hangout. When I mentioned to Haley that maybe her friends should contribute something, even just cleaning up after themselves, she'd get this wounded look. They're going through hard times, Dean. Zoe's parents are super strict, and Shane's family doesn't understand his art. Our house is like a safe space for them. Safe space, right? More like free meal and entertainment center. Marlene would just shrug when I brought it up. Teenagers need friends. Remember being that age? Yeah, I remembered being that age. I also remembered having respect for other people's homes and not treating adults like service staff, but I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to be the one who couldn't handle normal teenage behavior. Plus, Haley was turning 18 soon, and I figured she'd mature once she hit legal adulthood and started thinking about college seriously. I was wrong. And I was about to find out exactly how wrong when 3 freeloaders decided to test just how much disrespect I'd tolerate in my own house. Haley's 18th birthday came and went without much drama. I got her a decent laptop for college, Marlene threw her a nice party, and for a few weeks things seemed normal. But once she was legally an adult, something shifted in her attitude, like she'd leveled up in some game and unlocked new powers. The money requests became bolder, not just school supplies anymore, but investment pieces for her wardrobe, premium skincare routines, and subscription services for everything under the sun. When I'd hesitate, she'd hit me with this routine about how she was practically an adult now and deserved some independence. I'm not asking for party money, Dean. This is stuff for my future. Professional clothes for job interviews, networking events, building my personal brand. But the worst part was how she'd weaponize Marlene's emotions. If I pushed back on anything, Haley would get teary-eyed and run to her mom about how I was being controlling and treating her like a child. Then Marlene would come to me with this concerned expression. She's trying to grow up, Dean. Maybe we should give her some space to make her own decisions. And like an idiot, I'd back down because the last thing I wanted was to cause problems between Marlene and her daughter. Meanwhile, Zoe and Shane were practically living at our house. They'd show up after school, raid the kitchen, monopolize the living room, and act like they owned the place. Shane would leave his guitar anywhere and play the same 3 chords over and over. Zoe would use our bathroom like her personal salon, leaving makeup and hair products scattered around. They'd order DoorDash to my house and just assume I'd cover it because they forgot their wallets. They'd invite friends over without asking, basically turning the place into a teenage commune. Then they'd stick around until midnight on school nights, acting shocked when I told them it was time to leave. But it got worse. These 2 parasites started treating my house like their personal everything. I'd come home from a 3-day haul to find Shane had borrowed my good socket wrench set from the garage. When I asked about it, he acted like I was being unreasonable. I needed to fix my bike chain. Man, chill out. No asking permission, no mention of when he planned to return it. Just took what he needed like we were roommates instead of him being a guest. Zoe was even worse. She turned my upstairs bathroom into her personal salon. Pink hair dye splattered on the shower walls. Makeup and bottles covering every surface. Hot tools plugged in everywhere. The place smelled like a chemical plant. When I mentioned it to Haley, she just shrugged. Zoe's parents won't let her dye her hair at home. She's just expressing herself. She can express herself somewhere that isn't my bathroom, and she can clean up after herself while she's at it. You're being dramatic, Dean. It's just hair dye, right? Try explaining that to the security deposit when pink stains are permanently etched into your shower grout. Then came the Netflix situation. I came home to find 6 devices streaming at once. Apparently, they'd handed our password out like Halloween candy. When I changed it, Haley got all indignant about how I was being controlling about stupid stuff. Shane would bring his laundry over and toss it in with ours. No asking, no detergent, just acting like the washer and dryer were community property. He didn't even separate colors. I found my work shirts bleeding dye thanks to his rank pants. Wow, Dean's in a mood, Zoe would say loud enough for me to hear whenever I asked for basic respect. Shane would pile on with, some people really hate young people having fun. Like expecting courtesy in my own house was some kind of crime. And Haley would just giggle and shrug like their disrespect was some kind of inside joke she wasn't part of but didn't mind watching. The breaking point almost came when I found out they'd been going through our stuff. Not stealing exactly, but borrowing without asking. Marlene's jewelry, my tools, clothes, whatever caught their fancy. When I confronted Haley about it, she acted like I was being paranoid. They're not stealing, Dean. Friends share things. That's what friendship means. Friends ask permission before taking other people's property. You're being dramatic. They always put everything back. That's when it clicked. Haley was training these parasites to disrespect me in my own home. Every time I let something slide, I was teaching them there were no real consequences for treating me like garbage. But I still didn't act. You know why? Because I'm a grown man who thinks before he reacts. And I was still hoping that maybe this was just a phase that Haley would grow out of once she started college and got some real-world perspective. I was giving her chances to be better because that's what fathers do. Well, that was about to end. When I'm done being patient, I'm done for good. And these three idiots were about to give me a reason to be done. The final straw came in March. Marlene and I were both pulling long shifts. She was covering for a sick coworker at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, and I was doing a quick turnaround haul to Denver. We'd be gone from 6 a.m. to about 8 p.m. The night before, Haley had been particularly difficult about house rules. When I mentioned that her friends needed to clean up after themselves, she'd rolled her eyes and given me that look that said I was being unreasonable. "Dean's right," Marlene had said, surprising both of us. "This is our home, not a free hangout space. If your friends can't show basic respect, they shouldn't be here. Your friends have been taking advantage of our hospitality," Marlene continued. "Dean works hard to provide for this family, and the least we can expect is courtesy in return." Before leaving for work Tuesday morning, I specifically told Haley not to have friends over while we were gone. Not because I'm a control freak, but because teenagers and unsupervised houses are a recipe for disaster. Basic common sense. "Sure thing, Dean. Just going to study and maybe catch up on some shows. Should have known better. Should have seen that little smirk she tried to hide." I got back around 7:30 p.m. exhausted from fighting traffic and dealing with a dispatcher who couldn't organize a lunch order. All I wanted was a drink, some dinner, and maybe an hour of quiet before bed. Instead, I pulled into my driveway and knew someone was about to get screwed. Cars everywhere. Music so loud I could feel it in my chest from outside the house. My front yard looked like a parking lot for delinquents. And through the living room window, I could see bodies moving around like some kind of high school free-for-all. I walked through my front door into a goddamn war zone. The music sounded like someone torturing a cat with a chainsaw. The living room was packed with kids I'd never seen before, drinking out of red cups and treating my furniture like playground equipment. Someone had moved my coffee table to make a dance floor. Someone else was smoking, or worse, couldn't tell. The kitchen was worse. Every dish I owned was dirty and scattered around. Empty pizza boxes stacked on counters, red cups and suspicious bottles everywhere. The floor was sticky with spilled drinks and food, and in the middle of it all, holding court like some kind of queen, was Haley laughing with Zoe and Shane, completely in her element, not a care in the world, until she saw me standing in the doorway. The look on her face was beautiful. Pure oh shit panic mixed with this desperate attempt to play it cool. Like maybe if she acted casual enough, I wouldn't notice that she'd turned my house into a frat party. "Dean, you're back early." Big fake smile talking loud over the music. "We were just having a few friends over to study." Right, because nothing says academic excellence like death metal at volumes that could wake the dead. Turn off the music now. Something in my voice made the whole room go quiet. You know that moment when even drunk teenagers can sense that an adult has reached his absolute limit? Yeah, that happened. Haley fumbled for her phone, trying to find the Bluetooth connection. The silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. 20 pairs of eyes staring at me like I was some kind of monster. "Everyone out now." "Dean, come on," Haley started. "Not you, them. Outside now." It was like watching cockroaches scatter when you turn on the lights. Kids grabbing phones and jackets, mumbling apologies or excuses, practically running for the door. Within 5 minutes, it was just me, Haley, Zoe, and Shane standing in the wreckage of my living room. "You two, outside," I pointed at the parasites. Zoe got indignant. "We live here too." "No, you're guests who've overstayed your welcome. Leave." Shane tried to be tough. "You can't just kick us out. Haley invited us." "Haley doesn't own this house." "I do, and I'm uninviting you permanently." They looked to Haley for backup, but she was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. After her parasitic friends slunk out, it was just me and Haley standing in the disaster zone that used to be my home. Before doing anything else, I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every piece of evidence that my house had been turned into Animal House, living room with furniture moved around and cup rings on my coffee table, kitchen with dirty dishes piled everywhere, and mystery stains on the floor, bathroom with toilet paper unrolled all over, and someone's vomit in my sink. Because people lie, memories fade, and lawyers love paperwork. If some parent wanted to claim their precious angel got injured at my house, or if cops showed up asking questions about underage drinking, I was going to have evidence of exactly what happened. I wasn't about to let Haley's stupidity threaten my livelihood. "Clean this up," I said after taking pictures. "Dean, I can explain. Clean this up." She started picking up cups and bottles, moving like someone who finally understood she'd screwed up beyond repair. But I wasn't done talking. "When your mother gets home, you're going to explain to her exactly what happened here." You're going to tell her how you deliberately disobeyed a direct instruction, invited strangers into our home, and let them trash the place while we were working to support you. It wasn't supposed to get this crazy, but it did because you're not responsible enough to make good decisions when nobody's watching, because you don't respect this house, me, or the work it takes to maintain all this. That's when she started. Okay, fine. I did. So what are you going to do about it? I have a right to have fun. This is my house too, and I live here. I looked her dead in the eye. What am I going to do about it? Yes. Not like you're going to kick me out because you can't. Also, just stop playing dad. You are not my dad and never will be. Stop telling me what to do. I am not a damn kid. She spat that loudly with attitude, probably thinking it was her legendary mic drop. Wrong move, princess. Pack your things, Haley. What? You're right. You are an adult. So congratulations. You're getting the whole package now. The panic in her eyes was real now. Wait, I didn't mean that. I'll clean everything. I'll never have friends over again. Nope. You had 3 years to learn respect, and I am done playing dad. That's what you want. No, you are like a father to me. You can't kick me out. Haley, I cut her off. Let's get one thing straight. You're not my daughter, and I never tried to be your dad. Everything I did for you was out of kindness, and you took it for granted, so don't argue. Pack your stuff now. And that's when everything went nuclear. Marlene got home 20 minutes later to find Haley sobbing in her bedroom, stuffing clothes into garbage bags. The house was clean, I'd made sure of that. But you could still smell the aftermath of teenage stupidity in the air. What's going on? Marlene asked, looking between me and the chaos upstairs. I explained everything. She listened without interrupting, but I could see her getting defensive as the story went on. Dean, she's just a kid. Kids make mistakes. She's 18. And this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. She chose to disrespect our home and our rules because she knew she could get away with it. Where's she supposed to go? Not my problem anymore. She wanted to act like an adult. She can solve adult problems. That's when she appeared in the doorway, red-eyed and desperate. Mom, please tell him I can stay. I'll be good, I promise. And Marlene immediately went into protection mode. This was the moment I'd been dreading, when I'd have to decide if I was a husband with a backbone or just a wallet with a pulse. Dean, you can't just throw her out. She's my daughter, my only child. Her father's dead. You're the only father figure she has left. And you want to abandon her because of one party? Not the party, Marlene. But I am done with the disrespect. Enough is enough. But she's been struggling since her dad died. You know about the therapy, the adjustment issues, the depression. I could see where this was going. The guilt trip, the emotional manipulation, the same thing Haley had been pulling on me for years. At what point does traumatized kids stop being an excuse and start being just plain entitlement? Marlene's voice got sharper, more desperate. So what? We just abandon her? Turn our backs when she needs us most? That's not who we are, Dean. That's not who you are. You're better than this. Better than what? Better than having standards? Better than expecting respect in my own home? You're throwing away a child. Because she made one? No, it wasn't one mistake. It was years of choices. But she was just getting started. She knew my history, knew my weaknesses, and she was about to use all of it. Dean, your own father walked out on you when you were 16. You told me how much that messed you up, how you swore you'd never abandon a kid the way he abandoned you. And now you're doing the exact same thing to Haley. That one landed hard. She was right. It had screwed me up for years. That's not the same thing, isn't it? A father figure giving up on a teenager because they're difficult, because they made bad choices. How is this any different? Because I'm not her father. Because I've spent 3 years trying to build a relationship with someone who sees me as an ATM machine with house privileges. Because respect goes both ways, and she's never shown me any. She's confused, Dean. The therapist said a lot of things. None of them included, let her disrespect you in your own home because she's sad. Marlene tried a different angle. What about us? What about our marriage? You're asking me to choose between my daughter and my husband. That's unfair. It's not about choosing. It's about boundaries. It's about whether you respect my authority in my own house or whether you're going to enable her behavior because it's easier than dealing with conflict. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? For 3 years, every time I've tried to set boundaries with her, you've asked me to be more understanding. Every time she's manipulated me, you've made excuses. Every time she's shown disrespect, you've blamed her trauma instead of holding her accountable. I walked to my office and started pulling out paperwork, bank statements, investment records, college fund documentation. Marlene followed me, getting more agitated by the minute. What are you doing? Closing Haley's college fund. Dean, you can't. That's her future. Watch me. I got on the phone with my financial advisor. Yeah, it's Dean. I need to liquidate the education fund we set up 3 years ago, close it completely, and transfer everything to my general savings. Marlene was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. That's $18,000. 18 grand I invested because I thought she was family. Turns out she was just overhead. My money won't go to her while she's treating me like a dog. She made one mistake. Her voice was rising. Stop it, Marlene. I am done here. You're destroying an 18-year-old's future over one bad decision. I'm not destroying anything. I'm removing my support from someone who's never appreciated it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about Haley anymore. This was about whether my marriage was going to work, whether Marlene respected me as her partner, or whether I was just a convenient provider who was expected to tolerate anything for the sake of keeping peace. Marlene, I need you to understand something. This is my house. I pay the mortgage, utilities, insurance, maintenance, everything. I have welcomed you and your daughter into my home and supported both of you for 3 years without complaint. I know that. Do you? Because right now you're asking me to continue housing someone who has zero respect for me or my property. Someone who thinks rules don't apply to her. She's my daughter, Dean, and I'm your husband, and this is my house. And I'm telling you that your daughter is no longer welcome here. The silence stretched out heavy enough to snap ribs. She was processing, maybe for the first time, that this wasn't a negotiation. This was me setting a boundary and expecting her to respect it. What if I can't accept that? She asked quietly. Then you're welcome to leave with her, I said. I won't stop you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. She stared at me, maybe seeing me clearly for the first time, not as patient, accommodating Dean who always bent over backward to make everyone happy, but as a man who'd reached his limit and was prepared to enforce his boundaries regardless of the cost. You'd choose this fight over our marriage? I'd choose self-respect over being disrespected in my own home. The choice is yours, Marlene. Respect my decision about my house or leave. She stood there for a moment. I could see her weighing options, calculating costs, trying to find some middle ground that would let everyone save face. There wasn't one. I'd made sure of that. Finally, she nodded. Okay, Haley can't stay. From upstairs we heard a door slam and the sound of someone completely losing their mind. Haley had been listening, and she had just realized that her mother had chosen her marriage over her daughter's comfort. 20 minutes later, she was gone. 2 garbage bags of clothes, a laptop, and whatever pride hadn't already leaked out on the driveway. No forwarding address, no contact information, no promises to stay in touch. Marlene cried that night. I held her while she grieved for the relationship she thought she had with her daughter, but she didn't ask me to change my mind, and I didn't offer to. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The house felt different without Haley. Quiet, clean, actually peaceful. That constant low-level tension I'd been carrying just evaporated overnight. No more random friends showing up. No more manipulation sessions disguised as emergencies. No more subtle disrespect, disguised as teenage attitude. Marlene struggled for the first few weeks. She'd still set 3 plates at dinner or grab Haley's favorite snacks without thinking, then just stare at her phone like she might call. But she never did. Any regrets? I asked her one evening about a month in. She thought about it for a long time. I regret that it came to this, but I don't regret choosing our marriage. Even if she never speaks to you again. She's an adult. If she can't understand that what you did was fair, then she's not ready to be part of a family that functions on mutual respect. That's when I knew I'd married the right woman. Not because she chose me over her daughter, but because she understood that enabling bad behavior isn't love. It's cowardice. Then I started getting information. I found out later through mutual connections that Haley was staying with Zoe's family. Apparently, that lasted about 2 weeks before Zoe's parents kicked her out. Then she tried Shane's place, but his parents wouldn't even let her stay overnight. Word was she ended up in some crappy apartment with 3 roommates, working at a restaurant for minimum wage plus tips. No car, no college fund, no safety net, just reality hitting full force. The details that trickled back through the grapevine painted a picture of someone learning hard lessons fast. Marlene's coworkers saw Haley at the grocery store buying nothing but ramen noodles and peanut butter. The kind of diet you eat when every dollar counts. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing the same uniform shirt 3 days in a row because she couldn't afford enough work clothes. Her manager eventually had to pull her aside about crying during shifts. Customers were complaining about the weepy waitress who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Haley was having trouble keeping up with orders, dropping plates, forgetting simple requests. The stress of being completely on her own was showing in everything she did. But here's where it gets really good. Remember those loyal friends who treated my house like their personal resort? Yeah, they were about to give Haley a lesson in what real friendship looks like when the money runs out. First, there was Zoe. Sweet pink-haired Zoe, who always had an emergency but never had a solution. Turns out she borrowed $300 from Haley's first paycheck. Money Haley desperately needed for rent. The story was some sob tale about her parents threatening to kick her out unless she contributed to household expenses. Haley, still thinking these parasites actually cared about her, handed over cash she couldn't afford to lose. Surprise! Zoe spent it on a new tattoo and designer makeup. When Haley asked for the money back, she acted offended. I thought we were friends. Friends help each other out. Then there was Shane, the musician who'd never met a responsibility he couldn't avoid. This guy convinced Haley to let him borrow her beat-up Honda Civic for a really important gig that was going to change everything for his career. You know, the same career that involved playing 3 chords badly while expecting other people to fund his artistic vision. He took the car on a Friday, promising to return it Sunday. Come Monday, no car, no Shane, no response to texts or calls. Turns out our aspiring rock star had driven it to some music festival 3 states away, blown the engine, and just walked away. Left Haley's only transportation sitting in a festival parking lot with a blown head gasket and a pile of unpaid parking tickets. When Haley finally tracked him down, he shrugged it off, said her junk car wasn't his fault, and maybe she should buy something decent next time. Meanwhile, her roommates were circling like vultures. These 3 strangers she'd found on Craigslist started hitting her up for extra money every week. Groceries, utilities, cleaning supplies. Somehow everything became Haley's responsibility because she was the new girl and needed to prove she was cool. They'd eat her food, use her toiletries, then act like she was being selfish when she asked them to replace what they'd used. The absolute chef's kiss. Both Zoe and Shane ghosted Haley the second she couldn't provide any more free benefits. No more house to crash at, no more food to raid, no more money to borrow. Suddenly, Haley wasn't worth their time anymore. Zoe went online ranting about toxic people and money. Shane wrote lyrics about fake friends who value stuff over connection. The irony was beautiful. As the weeks went by, Marlene started hearing updates that Haley was really struggling, working double shifts to afford rent and groceries, eating cheap food to stretch her food budget. Should we help her? Marlene asked one evening. Help her what? Learn that actions have consequences? She's getting a master class in that right now. I mean financially, just enough to get stable. If you want to send her money from your personal account, that's your choice. But nothing from our joint accounts and nothing that comes back to me. She burned that bridge completely. Marlene never sent money. I think she realized that rescuing Haley would just reset the whole cycle. That's the thing about enabling. It feels like love, but it's actually the opposite. 2 months went by without a word. No calls, texts, social media contact, nothing. It was like Haley had just vanished from our lives completely. Honestly, I was fine with that. Then one evening, Marlene got a text message from Haley. She wants to meet with you, Marlene said, showing me the screen. Says she wants to apologize and talk about some things. She offered to pay for dinner. She'd pay. The kid who used to spend my money like it was unlimited was offering to pay for dinner. Either she'd learned something or she was setting up another manipulation attempt. Either way, I was curious enough to find out which. I agreed to meet her at a casual chain restaurant. Marlene came with me. When I walked in and saw her sitting in a corner booth, I barely recognized her. The good clothes were gone, replaced by what looked like Walmart basics. No professional makeup, no expensive accessories. She looked tired, older, like someone who'd been working hard just to survive. Her phone had a cracked screen in one of those cheap plastic cases from a gas station. Her nails were chipped, hands rough. Everything about her screamed broke. She stood up when she saw me, nervous. Just exhaustion and something that might have been humility. Dean, thanks for coming. I sat down across from her, studying her face. You wanted to talk. Talk. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. I owe you an apology. I mean it. I treated you both like crap, and I acted like your house, your rules, your money. None of it mattered. I thought I was untouchable. I thought you'd never actually follow through. I was wrong. I'm working 60 hours at a job I hate, stuck with roommates who treat me like crap, walking to work. It's different when there's nobody to bail you out when you screw up. I thought you were weak because you didn't fight me every time I acted out, she continued. Most people would have kicked me out after the first month of crap. Marlene spoke up then, voice calm but with an edge. I love you, Haley. You're my daughter, but you burned through every ounce of goodwill we had. Haley nodded. I understand. I don't expect to come home. I don't expect money. I just wanted you both to know I get it now, that I'm sorry, and that I'm going to prove I learned something from this. We ate mostly in silence after that. When she went to the bathroom, Marlene asked, what do you think? I think she's learned something. Question is whether it'll stick once things get easier. When the check came, Haley grabbed it before either of us could reach for it. Paid cash, probably half her week's wages, but she didn't flinch or make a show of it. As we stood to leave, I slid an envelope across the table. It was a check. Haley was confused. $2,000, I said. She froze, staring at the piece of paper. Dean, no, I can't take this. You can, I said flatly. But here's the deal. This is it. The last dime you'll ever get from me. Use it for a car, school, rent. I don't care. But don't come back asking for more because there won't be any. I'm doing this for the sake of your mother only. You see, it was enough to solve her immediate problems. Buy a cheap, reliable car, pay a couple months' rent, maybe get some decent work clothes. But it wasn't enough to make her comfortable. It wasn't enough to let her coast or stop working. It was exactly enough rope to either pull herself up or hang herself with. Her hand shook when she picked it up. She looked between me and her mother, probably trying to figure out what the catch was. You stand on your own from here, I said. She nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you so much. Marlene finally spoke. We're not your enemies, but we're not your safety net either. You show us respect, you get respect. That's the only way forward. Haley's eyes welled up then, but she held it together. She tucked the check into her pocket like it was made of gold. I'll prove it. Thank you for one last chance. We walked out together, but not like some happy family reunion, more like three people who'd finally put the terms of a contract in writing. At the curb, Haley hesitated. Mom, Dean, I really am sorry. We heard you, I said. Now show us. She smiled, then walked one way and we walked the other. That was it. No grand speeches, no warm hugs. Terms were set, accounts closed. 6 months later, she'd used the money to buy a reliable used car and put the rest toward community college classes. Working her way through school, she's finally learning that the world doesn't revolve around her. And that's what I call a win all around.